It's time for Recipe of the Day. Happy Friday. We made it. And I don't know about you, but I wanted a little pick me up and really like date night French fancy kind of food. And so I got it into my head that I wanted to talk about steak tartare because it really is one of my favorite restaurant foods to make at home and so easy. But then when I was doing the research, it turns out that it might not actually be French, even though it's very popular in France, but I've already decided that I'm talking about it. And so we are doing this. So yes, it seems that it was actually introduced throughout Europe in the 17th century by Russian ships, and it possibly came from Mongolia, which is why it's called tartare. But in the 20th century in France, it was actually known as steak à l'américaine, so it was like American steak. Anyhow, whatever you want to call it, steak tartare is what I'm going with. It is raw beef that's chopped up finely and then mixed with other ingredients to just be extra flavorful. There's usually a little bit of raw egg in there, sometimes some Worcester sauce, capers, pepper, seasonings. I'm going to say that if you are not somebody who likes eating raw things, this is not for you for sure. If you are immunocompromised in any way, or if like you're pregnant or any kind of risk factors that might make this not suitable for you, do not make it. Do not taste it. It's not worth it. I mean, it's delicious, but it's not worth your health. So just take into account your own personal restrictions if you're thinking about making this. Now, if you are going to make this, you do still have to take some precautions. So what you're going to be looking for is some beef tenderloin that's like filet mignon, and you want about 4 ounces to serve 2 to 4 people as an appetizer. You can, of course, do more than that. If you are at the grocery store and the filet mignon is packaged in like packs of 2 or 4, you can always ask the butcher meat counter to just give you one of them. That is something that works. Now, you want to buy the freshest meat possible. So you want to talk to your butcher, or you want to look for really late sell-by dates, like really far into the future. Those are good things to do. Talking to somebody, checking those dates. You absolutely do not want to use ground beef because that has too much surface area. Each little ground of it has surface area, and that's why you always need to cook ground beef really, really well. And so you don't want to use ground beef. You want to use the filet mignon. You want to use the steak. And if you are a little bit concerned, there is something that you can do, and that is when you get it home, refrigerate it right away. For sure, refrigerate it right away no matter what. And then you want to take a sharp knife and just trim off the outside edges before you start making this. And that just takes away the places that are most likely to have bacteria. You don't have to do that step, especially if you know the meat is fresh and you're doing this right on the day that you got it and it went straight into the fridge, like all of that. But it is just an extra precaution that you can take. Okay, so now we're ready to make the steak tartare. So it's been in the fridge the whole time. You're going to take it out of the fridge. I should say that some people actually like to freeze the beef a little bit before cooking it to make it easier to slice thinly. And I do recommend that for beef carpaccio, where you're trying to make those like almost see-through thin slices, but it's not necessary for the steak tartare, and I don't do it. So I'm coming straight out of the fridge with that. And then what I'm doing is using my sharpest knife to cut the thinnest slices of beef that I can. Just cut that all into slices, and then take each slice one at a time and cut it into the thinnest strips you can. You're just trying to get really nice and thin. Then gather up those strips, and then you chop those into nice thin little bits, nice small little pieces. And I'm going to link to this post. It has a very good step-by-step tutorial, and it actually shows you on a cutting board, starting with the full steak, and then what the slices should look like, what the strips should look like, and then what those little pieces should look like, so that you have a good idea of what you're trying to do. Now, often steak tartare is served with like a raw egg yolk on top as part of the presentation, but I like to mix all the ingredients that are going to go into the steak tartare together before serving it, and I find that that lets it get more evenly mixed throughout, and it lessens the possibility that we're going to be like bruising or mushing the meat as we're stirring it together, like at the table. And also over mixing ground meat or chopped meat like this can make it tough. So I want to have all the control over all the mixing before it gets served. So that's what I'm trying to do. So what I do for the 4-ounce beef tenderloin is to mix together half of an egg yolk with a tablespoon of olive oil, a 1/4 teaspoon of sherry vinegar, a 1/4 teaspoon of salt, an 1/8 of a teaspoon of coarsely ground black pepper, half a teaspoon of dried mustard, 2 tablespoons of chopped shallot. Or if you don't have shallot, you could use about a clove of garlic finely minced. That'll be great in there. And then 2 tablespoons of capers. Measure them, like drain them and measure them, and then chop them. And you mix that all together. Then I add it into a bowl with the chopped beef. And now again, we don't want to overmix this. So what I like to do is to use a fork, and I'm kind of fluffing it together, just turning it in about 8 times just to make sure that that mixture is really thoroughly mixed through, but not overmixed. Now it's time to plate it. My favorite thing to do is to get a cookie cutter. You want about a 3 to 4 inch diameter cookie cutter, and you put that on the serving plate, and then you just transfer that chopped up steak mixture into there, press down a little bit on the top, and then lift up the cookie cutter. If you don't have a cookie cutter, you can use a ramekin, grease it on the inside and on the bottom, then pile the steak into there, and then put a plate on top of it, and then invert so that you end up with that steak kind of falling in that nice pattern. If you don't want to be fancy, this is fine just served in a nice little bowl or piled onto a plate. You just want some nice like toast or crackers, something really good to serve it on. And I do love to garnish it with some fresh parsley and some lemon zest. The lemon zest really makes a difference here. Don't skip it unless you really, really don't want it for some reason, but it really makes a difference. I really like that brightness, and the parsley too, and flat leaf parsley, not curly parsley. And then just your toast points. I wouldn't butter them because this is very rich, and then you're good to go. You've got not technically French steak tartare to celebrate the start of your weekend. I will put the link to this recipe in the show notes for this podcast episode, or you can head to cookthestory.com/ROTD and get it there. Everything there is arranged by date, so it's helpful to know that today is January 10th of 2025. I'm also going to let you know that if you love getting these recipe ideas from this podcast from me every day, if you like the way I cook, my style, you will probably also like all the ideas that I send out by email. It's 2 emails a week, and it's always something like seasonal, just right for today, recipes that work. You know they work. The easiest way to sign up to get my emails is go to cookthestory.com, and at the top, you'll see it says start here, or you can go to cookthestory.com/start-here, and then you'll see like just a little bit down there that you can sign up for the weekly newsletter, and then you'll start getting all of those ideas in your inbox. The decision making is done for you, so you can get cooking. I am Christine Pittman from cookthestory.com, thecookful.com, the all new chicken cookbook, and from this podcast, Recipe of the Day. I hope you have a great day. Let's get cooking.